Chapter 58:17. Looking at Deep Beichan, Nangong Yuqing, and the others could only feel that even someone as powerful as him was being completely suppressed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Jiang Wenyan's eyes were overflowing with brilliance, and the corners of their mouths couldn't help but curl upwards. Murong Jing looked at the man in front of him, and even as a man, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. He was really handsome. That's right. No matter who he was, if he dared to kill someone he cared about, then he wouldn't rest until he was dead. So what if he was crazy in the eyes of others? Ever since Di Beichun came to the upper realm, he had always been a maverick existence. The eyes of Huang Futing and the other dark attribute cultivators were full of worship and reverence. That was their belief. The Dark Holy Sun was different from ordinary people. From a moment he made up his mind to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly, he had already subverted everyone's understanding, and yet he still went crazy for it. Qin Hongliang stared at Di Beichun in a daze, and when he came back to his senses, his face had turned ashen. For a long time, he had always said this kind of thing. When had he ever met such an arrogant guy? Di Beichun, aren't you overestimating yourself? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you're the young master of the D family? Don't forget, if you don't have this identity, you are nothing at all. Qin Hongliang had already thrown his previous bearing to the side, and his roaring appearance didn't have the slightest bit of calmness and composure. If it wasn't for the D family and the Holy Daughter of the Light, no one would know who Di Beichun was. Di Beichun just looked at Qin Hongliang indifferently, and his voice was as gentle as water, like the sound of nature, but it made people unable to help but go crazy. Indeed, if I wasn't the young master of the D family, how could you be the eldest senior brother of the Blue Cloud sect? You, Qin Hongliang gritted his teeth, and only felt a stream of air rushing to the top of his head and exploding with a loud bang. Blood rushed to his face, and even his ears turned the color of pig liver. Let's see what you're capable of. In the next moment, a long staff appeared in Qin Hongliang's hand. This long rod was completely red, and there was a golden, protruding totem on top of it. It was as if a golden dragon was circling around it, and it was awe-inspiring and imposing. With a single glance, one could tell that this long staff was no ordinary item. Bang! With the stomp of the long staff, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the ground with the place where it landed as the center. Seeing this, everyone's pupils constricted. The strength of this long rod was obvious. This Qin Hongliang is an extremely outstanding disciple of the Blue Cloud sect. It is said that he is the junior of an elder. Whether it is cultivation resources or weapons, he is much better than ordinary cultivators. I heard that this long staff was something he obtained from a ruin a few years ago, and the Blue Cloud sect gave it to him as a reward. Not only that, it is said that he has already broken through to the Radiant Moon realm. Beichun, you must be careful. Murong Jing approached Di Beichun and introduced him in a low voice. Di Beichun's eyes turned slightly. From the moment Qin Hongliang appeared, he knew that his strength was not ordinary. Up until now, there were very few cultivators who had broken through to the Radiant Moon realm among the various forces. Since Qin Hongliang was able to break through, his strength was naturally not weak. Do you dare to fight one-on-one with me? Qin Hongliang waved his long staff, and even the air was filled with a sonic boom. The long staff was pointed directly at Di Beichun, and his ink-black eyes were as cold as knives, and his murderous aura was threatening. Chapter 58:18. Han Bowen had wanted to ally with the Nangong family to deal with Di Beichun and the others, but he had never expected that the situation would suddenly turn into a conflict between the two of them. Do you think I'm inferior to him? Qin Hongliang glanced at Han Bowen indifferently. The coldness and indifference in his eyes shocked Han Bowen. He immediately shook his head and did not dare to persuade him anymore. However, Qin Hongliang seemed to have been provoked by his words. His voice became even more resolute and unyielding. I won't stop until one of us dies. Do you dare? Di Beichun looked at the face in front of him that was flushed red with anger. His black eyes were like deep pools that contained a sharp and intimidating light. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, bringing with them an extreme danger and charm. Looking at deep Beichan like this, the women present could not help but exclaim in their hearts, "Evildoer!" He was a living evildoer. However, that extreme overbearingness and wildness of his made people fall deep into it and unable to extricate themselves. "I'll accompany you to the end." The cold words were filled with an endless domineering aura. The cold and arrogant aura emitted from his body made people shudder. Qin Hongliang, who was originally furious, felt an inexplicable sense of guilt at this moment. However, he forced himself to maintain the angry expression on his face, unwilling to let others see the fear in his heart. In the next moment, Deep Beichan stepped forward. His incomparably handsome face was cold and indifferent. The silver-sharp sword reflected an eerie cold light under the sunlight. His white robe fluttered without any wind, and his black hair brushed past his face. He was like a god descending to the mortal world. "Make your move." The corners of his lips curled up dangerously. His extremely pleasant voice was filled with murderous intent. "Ah!" Qin Hongliang roared. He, who had long since been unable to withstand such an aura, charged forward crazily. The red long rod in his hand was vigorous and powerful. The air seemed to be stirred by the long rod. His cultivation of the radiant moon realm was completely exposed as he attacked Di Beichan with frightening momentum. Di Beichan's figure flashed like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he quietly landed behind Qin Hongliang. After Qin Hongliang saw Di Beichan's figure disappear, he quickly locked onto the aura behind him. As the eldest senior of the Blue Cloud sect, his combat experience was also extremely rich. With a backflip, he waved his long staff and blocked Di Beichan's sharp sword. Ding! The blade of the sword collided with the long staff, and sparks flew everywhere. After sensing Di Beichan's cultivation, Qin Hongliang's heart was also at ease. Nebula Stage 9. Even if Di Beichan was really an outstanding existence in the same realm, it was impossible for Di Beichan to be his opponent in the gap between the two realms. If he killed Di Beichan, he would be famous from now on. After sensing the gap between the two's cultivation, Huang Futing and the others could not help but worry. He turned his head to ask Bailey Hongzhuang, but he saw a faint and elegant smile on the latter's beautiful face. That was the gentle gaze of someone looking at the person they loved, and it was also filled with deep trust. Seeing this, Huang Futing was even more confused. "Miss Bailey, there is a gap between the young master and Qin Hongliang's cultivation. Aren't you worried at all?" "Worried about what?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her clear black and white eyes were filled with confidence. "Don't worry, Beichan will be fine." Before fighting with a cultivator of the Radiant Moon Realm, she would be worried about this problem. However, even when facing Qing Devil, Di Beichan could hurt him. This proved the true power of his killer move. Chapter 58-19. Although Huang Futing was doubtful, he believed in Bailey Hongzhuang. Since she said so, there was no need for him to worry. After the crowd put down their worries, they were no longer as nervous as before. Instead, they carefully observed the battle between the two. Clang! 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 The sword and the staff kept colliding. The attack range of the staff was larger than that of the sword. In order to injure Qin Hongliang, Di Beichan had to close the distance between them. During this process, the crowd also witnessed how terrifying his ghostly figure was. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. They could only rely on their aura to lock onto him. If they were even a little slower, they would be seriously injured. However, Qin Hongliang's title as the eldest senior brother of the Blue Cloud sect was not for nothing. He had rich battle experience and was very powerful. For a moment, the two sides were neck and neck. In the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, this was the scene, but in the eyes of Nangong Yuqing and the others, it was a completely different scene. Qin Hongliang was in the Radiant Moon Realm. Although they knew that he had not used his killing move, the fact that they were tied showed that there was a problem. Nangon Yuqing secretly judged in his heart. If the person fighting Di Bei Chun at this moment was him, would his performance be better than Qin Hongliang's? The more Qin Hongliang fought, the more frightened he became. He thought that this would be an easy fight, but now it seemed that was not the case at all. Di Beichun's movement technique was exquisite. Although there was a gap of one realm between them, his strength was not weaker than Nangon Yuqing's. As a result, Nangon Yuqing did not have any advantage. Wood binding technique. Qin Hongliang shouted coldly, and the power of the wood element burst out. Then, to everyone's amazement, they saw a piece of wood suddenly appear, densely intertwined together like a snake. In the blink of an eye, it formed a huge cage, trapping Di Bei Chun in it. This is the technique of a wood element cultivator. Bai Li Yin Che's eyes narrowed, and a trace of shock and worry appeared on his handsome face. After the awakening of an elemental talent, the cultivators of each element would master the offensive techniques of their respective elements. However, it wasn't easy to grasp these methods. Not only did it require the methods of their respective powers, it also required their own comprehension ability. Obviously, this was their first time coming into contact with the wood binding technique. These vines seemed to have a life of their own as they continued to compress Di Bei Chun, as if they were trying to strangle him to death. Qin Hongliang controlled the wooden strips with both hands. He had only started cultivating the wood binding technique after breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm. This wood binding technique seemed easy, yet it was extremely difficult to cultivate. It required one to have sufficient understanding of the wood attribute and be able to communicate with the wood attribute in the heavens and the earth before controlling and transforming it into one's own strength. He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate the wood binding technique and had failed many times before it began to take shape. He believed that it was impossible for Di Beichun to master such a method, since he had yet to break through to the Radiant Moon tier. Di Beichun waved the sword in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, he had stabbed more than 100 times. But for some reason, these vines were extremely sturdy, and even the sharp sword could not pierce through them. Seeing that the gap in the cage was getting smaller and smaller, he knew that if he couldn't escape, he would really die here. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. This was the first time she had seen such a method, and it was definitely not easy to break through. She wanted to help, but the auras of Nangon Yuqing and the others had already locked onto them. Chapter 5820. Damn it, I didn't expect Qin Hongliang to be able to learn this move. Murong Jing cursed. His usually gentle face was now full of anger. This kind of move was almost unbreakable for cultivators below the Radiant Moon realm. After Di Beichun discovered that his sword couldn't cut through the Rot Tan, he knew that the Rot Tan was filled with wood attribute energy and was far more resilient than normal. In this forest, wood attribute energy was the most abundant, so it was too difficult to use other methods to break it. The corners of Qin Hongliang's mouth gradually rose. Since the beginning of the fight, he had been secretly afraid that he would be defeated by Di Beichun if he wasn't careful. In desperation, he could only use his killing move. In fact, he hadn't mastered this move for long, and it wasn't 100% successful. Fortunately, he was lucky this time and successfully used it. As long as Di Beichun couldn't break this move, he would win. Han Bowen and the others smiled happily when they saw this scene. It seemed that the situation wasn't as bad as they thought. No matter how strong Di Beichun was, he was still limited by his level. Nangon Yuqing couldn't help but secretly rejoice. He had always been afraid of Di Beichun's strong rise, but he didn't dare to act rashly because he worried that he might not be a match for Di Beichun. Now that Qin Hongliang had helped him solve this big problem, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. It was easy to imagine how happy he was. Di Beichun, you're too arrogant. Qin Hongliang looked coldly at Di Beichun, and his calm voice was full of ridicule. How arrogant was Di Beichun before? Wasn't he still trapped in a Rot Tan and unable to move? If you admit your mistake and beg for mercy, I might consider letting you live. Qin Hongliang couldn't hide his pride. Of course, even if Di Beichun begged for mercy, he wouldn't let him go. However, only by humiliating him before he died would he be able to vent his anger even more thoroughly. However, just when Qin Hongliang was feeling extremely complacent, a dazzling sword qi suddenly appeared from the vine cage. It was an extremely sharp sword energy that seemed to be able to cut through everything in the world. It was invincible and invincible. You think too much. The magnetic and pleasant voice carried with it an icy chill. Everyone only heard a crisp sound before the seemingly indestructible cage was completely shattered. A cool breeze blew and his robes fluttered. That godlike handsome figure once again appeared before everyone's eyes. His incomparably handsome face held a playful smile, with a hint of wickedness and arrogance, but it was so pleasing to the eye. The one who should be begging for mercy is you. Looking at Di Beichun, who had escaped, Qin Hongliang's eyes were filled with shock. For a moment, he couldn't come back to his senses. How is this possible? His eyes were lifeless, as if he had received a huge blow. His mind was completely blank. His master had clearly told him that this move could be considered his ultimate move. It was impossible for cultivators below the Radiant Moon realm to break through this move, but Di Beichun had broken through it. How is this possible? Han Bowen and Nangong Yuqing's eyes widened, and their hearts were in a perilous situation. Soon, Nangong Yuqing's expression returned to normal. It seemed that he had been right all along. Di Beichun was an existence that defied common sense. Chapter 58:21. Even though this was the second time they had seen Di Beichun use this move, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were still amazed. They were keenly aware that the second time Di Beichun used it, he was obviously more proficient than the first time, and his speed was also faster. In fact, they had practiced this move at the same time as Di Beichun, but they had never used it before. Even though they had practiced it for a long time, there was still a gap in the strength of the sword qi. Di Beichun did not give Qin Hongliang time to think. He stabbed out with his sword again, and a dazzling sword light quietly appeared. This time, everyone was closer, so they could feel it more clearly. Nangong Yuqing only felt that the sharp sword qi seemed to be able to pierce through everything. This was almost beyond his understanding. It was even more terrifying than the strongest martial skill he had ever seen. He could not believe that Di Beichun possessed such a martial skill. Even the Nangong family did not possess such a level of martial skill. A dazzling light flashed, and Di Beichun turned around indifferently and walked back to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Everyone looked at Qin Hongliang, who was still standing in the same place, with some doubts in their hearts. Wasn't this supposed to be a fight to the death? Why did it suddenly end? Eldest senior brother? Han Bowen called out softly, only to find that Qin Hongliang was still standing in the same place with the same expression as before, completely ignoring him. Seeing this, Han Bowen frowned slightly, not understanding what was going on. However, when he reached out to touch Qin Hongliang's head rolled to the ground, and his face spun a few times before coming to a stop. No one had expected such a situation, and for a moment, the Blue Cloud Sect's cultivators' faces were filled with horror. Eldest senior brother, everyone wailed, and when they looked at Di Beichun again, there was a trace of fear in their eyes besides hatred. In their eyes, the strength of their eldest senior brother was already an extremely powerful existence. But Di Beichun had not yet broken through to the Radiant Moon realm, yet he was able to kill their eldest senior brother. If he broke through to the Radiant Moon realm, that scene, they did not dare to think about it. Looking at the sorrowful faces of the Blue Cloud Sect's cultivators, Di Beichun did not care. It was Qin Hongliang who had proposed the death match, and the result was also his own choice. Di Beichun, you actually killed our eldest senior brother. Han Bowen pointed his finger at Di Beichun. His blood rushed to his head, and his face was filled with anger. Di Beichun only glanced at his hand, and Han Bowen could not help but be startled. He sheepishly withdrew his hand. So what? Han Bowen was stunned and continued. Our Azure Cloud sect will not let you off. So you're saying that you're forcing us to kill all of you? Bailey Hongzhuang, who was standing next to Di Beichun, suddenly spoke. Looking at the married couple's appearance, Han Bowen and the others were so angry that they were speechless. How could you speak like that? These two people were really a match made in heaven, where you kill and I sharpen my blade. Murong Jing and the others' eyes were cold, and it was obvious that they were ready to attack. As long as Han Bowen and the others dared to make any movements, they would definitely attack without hesitation. Seeing this, the Blue Cloud Sect's cultivators could only swallow their frustration. They were more worried that if Di Beichen and the others had the intention to kill, all of them might have to die here. Chapter 58:22. If he had known that they were such a useless bunch, he would not have chosen to come here with them. He suddenly admired Huang Fugang. Perhaps he had already guessed that this would happen, so he left first. With such pig-like teammates, it was better to act on his own. Although Qin Hongliang's cultivation was good, his brain was not good. The situation should not have reached this point, but he had courted death by proposing a battle to the death. He deserved to end up like this. This guy must have not heard of Di Beichen's deeds, so he was overconfident. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret, so he could only regret it in hell. Nangong Yuqing, it seems that your vision is not very good. Bali Yanche looked at Nangong Yuqing mockingly. Do you want to try fighting with us? I heard that you have also broken through to the Radiant Moon stage. Hearing this, everyone's eyes were fixed on Nangong Yuqing. The cultivators of the Nangong family tensed up in an instant. Once they started fighting, a great battle would break out between the two forces. Han Bowen looked at Nangong Yuqing expectantly. If Nangong Yuqing wanted to fight with them, they would accompany him to the end. However, Nangong Yuqing ignored Han Bowen and said with a faint smile, "You think too much. I just dropped something and came back to look for it. It seems that I can't find it, so let's leave." What a joke. Di Beichen's move just now. Even he didn't have the confidence to avoid it. He did not want to lose his life here. Moreover, Qin Hongliang had nothing to do with him, so why should he take the risk for him? Han Bowen did not expect Nangong Yuqing to be so cowardly. He had not even dared to fight. So, what should they do? From the beginning to the end, Di Beichen only looked at Nangong Yuqing indifferently. He did not intend to pay attention to this guy, but sooner or later, he would become a stumbling block because of his appearance. When the time was right, he would completely eliminate this trouble. Since he did not understand the situation, there was no need to keep him alive. Nangong Yuqing smiled and cupped his fists. Just as he was about to leave, the sound of dense footsteps came from not far away. Just based on this sound, everyone was sure that this was a very large group, perhaps even more than the number of people here. Soon, a group of people appeared in everyone's sight. At first glance, Di Beichen noticed Chen Feng from the Great Devil Sect. However, apart from Chen Feng, he also saw Chu Yingming and several other powers. Chen Feng, we meet again. A warm smile appeared on Di Beichen's face. It was less cold and more amiable. Chen Feng was pleasantly surprised to see Di Beichen. Beichen, you are still alive. This is great. Now, I'm afraid that everyone in the ancient battlefield thinks that we have died. Di Beichen chuckled. Almost everyone, when they saw them, would say this in the first sentence. Chen Feng shrugged helplessly. The incident at the pavilion in the middle of the lake has spread far and wide. In a short period of time, everyone knows about it. I think only a small number of people don't know about it. Why are there so many of you here? Chapter 58:23. When Chu Yingming and the rest saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were all standing there safely, they couldn't help but sigh inwardly. They were truly lucky. From the looks of it, the whirlpool that suddenly appeared at the bottom of the lake might have been there to save their lives. After all, under such circumstances, it would have been too difficult for Di Beichen's group to return to the shore alive. If they hadn't been sucked into the lake, perhaps they would have already died. Perhaps they might even have obtained some incredible fortuitous encounter at the bottom of the lake. Actually, we encountered it not too long ago. A few days ago, we noticed that something strange was happening in this area. In the evening, the fiery clouds would change into a unique shape and appear in this area every time. At first, we didn't pay much attention to it. However, after noticing that this was happening frequently, we decided to come and take a look. Along the way, we met other groups. After finding out that everyone had the same goal, we decided to travel together. With a smile on his face, Chen Feng explained the situation without any hesitation. The cultivators from the various sects did not expect Chen Feng to be so frank. Although they had already noticed this problem, there were even more groups that hadn't noticed it. Since everyone was paying more attention to their surroundings, very few people noticed the abnormality in the sky. Chen Feng explained the situation in detail without hiding anything. It could be seen that the rumors were true. Chen Feng was very close to the young master of the Di family. Hearing this, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other helplessly. In fact, during the past few days, since they had nothing to do during the day, they had also noticed the sky. It seemed like the secret of the blood spirit stone couldn't be kept. Bailey Hongzhuang shook his head without leaving a trace. Since things had already turned out this way, there was no need to hide it anymore. After seeing the groups from the Huangfu family, Nangong family, and Qingyun sect today, everyone had a premonition in their hearts. Previously, they had walked for so many days without encountering a single group. However, in one day, they had encountered so many groups. It could be seen that this was fate. After Chen Feng finished explaining his purpose for coming here, he turned his gaze to the corpse on the ground not far away. It was Qin Hongliang, the eldest disciple of the Qingyun sect. As a member of the sect, he had some contact with Qin Hongliang. He didn't expect this guy to be dead. His gaze swept past Nangong Yuqing and Han Bowen before finally landing on Di Beichen and the others. He didn't even need to think to know that Qin Hongliang had died at their hands. When Han Bowen saw so many teams, he was overjoyed. Even the heavens were helping him. Originally, when he saw Nangong Yuqing's indifferent attitude, he was worried about what they should do. Once Di Beichen and the others attacked them, they would have the advantage in both numbers and strength. As a result, they would be in great danger. However, now that so many teams had come, the most important thing was that Xiao Yao Palace had a very good relationship with them. With a helper, their chances of escaping unscathed would be much higher. Han Bowen, what happened? How could Hong Liang? Gu Wenchang of Xiao Yao Palace walked to Han Bowen's side, his face filled with shock. Chapter 58-24. Following Han Bowen's words, everyone's gaze turned towards Di Beichen. They never thought that Di Beichen would have a conflict with the Qingyun sect. Han Bowen, please get this straight. The person who proposed the battle was your eldest senior brother. Later on, the person who changed his mind and proposed a battle to the death was also your eldest senior brother. Now that things have turned out this way, are you blaming us? Bali Yin Che's gaze was cold. He was also amazed by Han Bowen's ability to distort the truth. As long as it was a battle to the death, there was no need to say anything more. Winning was due to one's ability, and losing was due to one's lack of strength. Sure enough, after hearing this explanation, the crowd no longer had any thoughts of asking further. Although they did not know why Qin Hongliang would provoke Di Beichen for no reason, since he was the one who proposed the battle to the death and had fallen, he could only blame himself for making the wrong judgment. Han Bowen glared at Bai Li Yin Che with resentment. Initially, he had only wanted to deal with Jiang Wenyan. However, this group of people had dragged them into this and even forced them into the situation. No matter what, he could not let Di Beichen and the others escape unscathed today. A sinister idea formed in Han Bowen's mind. He wanted to pull everyone to his side. Di Beichen and the others have a treasure in their hands. Han Bowen shouted loudly. Previously, Jiang Wenyan and I had discovered a treasure together. However, they had taken it away. My eldest senior brother had wanted to take it back, but ended up in this situation. The crowd was not interested in the grudge between the Qingyun sect and the Di family. However, after hearing the word treasure, everyone's eyes brightened. Up until now, everyone's gains in the ancient battlefield were pitifully small. However, everyone understood that the gains from this place must be something extraordinary. Originally, everyone had suspected that Di Beichen and the others had obtained a considerable gain from the bottom of the lake. However, no one had said anything. Naturally, they did not take the initiative to mention this. Now that Han Bowen had pointed out this point, everyone's thoughts became lively. Chen Feng noticed the sinister look in Han Bowen's eyes, and his face sank. Ownerless items have always belonged to whoever obtains them. It's your fault for not being able to obtain them due to your lack of strength. However, now you intend to borrow everyone's hands to help you take revenge. Aren't you too despicable? Chen Feng's protection caught everyone off guard. As such, everyone was dumbstruck. In the past, he had never seen Chen Feng protecting others. Chen Feng had always thought highly of himself and ignored others. However, his cultivation made everyone have no choice but to take him seriously. Among the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield, there were very few cultivators who had broken through to the Radiant Moon realm. However, this Chen Feng was truly too freakish. Not only had he broken through to the Radiant Moon realm, he had even reached the second stage of the Radiant Moon realm. Among them, none of them were Chen Feng's match. Ever since this guy had made a name for himself, his strength had been crushing everyone. No matter how hard everyone tried to catch up, this guy was still firmly ahead of them. Han Bowen blanked for a moment before his eyes flickered. Even though he was being ignored, he still said unyieldingly, "Chen Feng, aren't you usually quite arrogant? Now, you are actually so protective of them. Do you really think that they will share this treasure with you? Stop dreaming." That's right. Gu Wenchang agreed. He was also interested in this treasure. However, their strength alone was not enough. As such, he had to help Han Bowen convince the others. Chapter 58-25. Even if they had the advantage in numbers, if Chen Feng decided to help Di Beichun, they would still have to think twice. After all, this competition did not depend on numbers. As long as Chen Feng, Di Beichun, and the others could suppress the leader, the result would be set. "Chen Feng, we came here together. Why don't you ask Di Beichun to show us the treasure?" Gu Wenchang said. "Or you can see if he is willing to show it to you. Don't be a fool." Everyone's gaze landed on Chen Feng and Di Beichun. This was a test of the trust between them. However, Chen Feng ignored Gu Wenchang's words. His expression was indifferent, but his voice was firm. "Gu Wenchang, I don't care about these things. He is my brother. What's mine is his. Do you think I would covet these things?" "Ah." Chen Feng sneered disdainfully. His attitude was clear. Not only Chen Feng, but the cultivators of the Great Devil sect were also unmoved. After coming out of the Immortal Cloud's secret domain, they had a good impression of Di Beichun and the others. There were a lot of treasures in this world, but it was impossible to rob someone just because they knew they had a treasure. Seeing that his attempt to sow discord was useless, Gu Wenchang's expression became unsightly. Although this kind of thing happened from time to time, it had never failed. He did not expect to be defeated this time. After seeing that there was no hope, everyone turned their gaze to Nangong Yuqing and Chu Yingming. Everyone was silent, but the atmosphere was somewhat strange. Di Beichun and the others knew that these people were plotting against each other. They were comparing the strength of both sides to see what their chances of victory were. As long as they were sure that their chances of victory were higher, they would definitely make their move. Chu Yingming noticed that everyone was looking at him. He looked at them indifferently and said, "Treasures belong to whoever obtains them. It is only natural." Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang healed his injuries, he had put away his original hatred. If she hadn't saved him, he would be dead by now. It was obvious that the Di family was on the rise. Coupled with Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as the Saint of the Light, they needed to think twice before making an enemy out of them. Back then, his father had spent so much effort to resolve the grudge between them. He would not stir up this conflict again. Chu Yingming's reaction was clearly outside of everyone's expectations. But like this, everyone had no chance of winning. Han Bowen and Gu Wenchang looked at each other. No one had thought of this situation, but they couldn't think of any other way if they couldn't resolve it at this point. "You bunch of idiots. Even at a time like this, you still pretend to be sincere. If he really treated you as friends, he wouldn't have been so secretive and not said anything." Han Bowen couldn't hold back the anger in his heart and sneered. Di Beichun looked at Han Bowen indifferently. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth rose into a devilish smile. I know that everyone wants to see what we obtained. I can show it to everyone. I can even share it with everyone. Chapter 58:26. It was obvious that everyone was at their wits' end, but Bei-chun was willing to share it with everyone. Could it be that he was provoked by Han Bowen and decided to do something so outrageous? Han Bowen was also stunned. For a moment, he wondered if he had heard wrongly. Although he had said so, he knew that no one else would do such a thing. However, Bei-chun actually had such a plan? Nangong Yuching was also stunned. He didn't understand what Bei-chun was thinking. If he had said so earlier, then things wouldn't have become so troublesome. However, Bei-chun's next words made Han Bowen and the others' faces turn ugly. In just a short moment, their faces turned red, and even their ears turned the color of pig liver. Their expressions were as disgusting as if they had eaten a fly. I'm willing to share it with everyone, but I have a request. They can't see it. Bei-chun used his hand to divide the area into the Nangong family, Blue Cloud sect, and Xiao Yao Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly, and her jet-black eyes couldn't help but smile. Bei-chun wanted to anger Han Bowen and the others to death. As long as we deal with them, I'll take it out. How about it? Bei-chun raised his eyebrows, and his eyes were full of ridicule. Since Han Bowen wanted to make a fuss about it, then he would make Han Bowen speechless. However, on another point, he had to thank Han Bowen. After this incident, his view of the Chu family had changed. Although the grudges between them had been resolved, there were too many situations in this world where people didn't get along. Chu Yingming didn't want to make a move in such a situation, which was enough to show that he had changed his mind. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Chu Yingming differently. Turning hostility into friendship wasn't a bad choice. No problem. We also have a problem. Leave it to us. A few groups responded one after another. If it was said that the difficulty of robbing them was too great before, now that Bei-chun was willing to share, the groups they had to deal with were the Blue Cloud sect, Nangong clan, and Xiao Yao Palace. Between the two teams, this request was undoubtedly much simpler. I don't have a problem with that either. Chu Yingming lightly smiled. He wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine. However, Bei-chun's move was even more ruthless. Han Bowen was really dumbfounded at this moment. He didn't expect Bei-chun to be so abnormal that he actually came up with such a method. Feeling the dangerous gazes of the crowd on him, his heart could not help but tighten. He could not stop his footsteps from retreating, only wanting to escape as soon as possible. Nangong Yuching was completely dumbfounded. He regretted it to death. Why did he follow the people of the Blue Cloud sect here? After coming here, not only did he reap all the benefits, but it also deepened the conflict between the two sides. Most importantly, he still had to face the pursuit of everyone. Wasn't this just shooting himself in the foot? He couldn't help but envy Chu Yingming. This guy was truly amazing. He was even able to endure the situation earlier. If he could endure it as well, this wouldn't have happened. Go! Chun Feng shouted coldly. Almost immediately, everyone charged toward Han Bowen's group. Noticing this, Gu Wenchang's group did not dare to hesitate and quickly retreated. Chapter 58:27. Damn it. This Bei-chun is simply a madman. Nangong Yuching cursed. His intestines were green with regret. After knowing Bei-chun's temperament, he should not have chosen to provoke him at such a time. Although Bei-chun had only been in the upper realm for a few years, Nangong Yuching knew from the time in the Immortal Cloud secret domain that Bei-chun would always do something amazing. The decision he made now was quite exaggerated. However, when he thought about it carefully, it was quite in line with his style. The cultivators from a Nangong family, the Azure Cloud sect, and the Xiao Yao Palace all spread their legs and quickly ran in all directions. At such a time, it was a competition of speed. If they fell behind, the result would be obvious. Gu Wenchang was no less depressed than Nangong Yuching. He had never dealt with Bei-chun before. How could he have known that this person would do something so outrageous? He was inexplicably implicated by the Blue Cloud sect. One could imagine how depressed he was. He also wanted to know what kind of treasure Bei-chun had obtained. However, He had no hope of obtaining it now, and was even being chased by everyone. The moment Bewitching saw Han Bowen running away, his figure flashed, and the sword in his hand flashed. It was an extremely thin sword light. It was hidden in the sunlight and was not obvious. However, the sharp feeling it gave off was something that could not be ignored. Han Bowen, who was running away, felt an extremely sharp aura approaching him. His scalp felt like it was going to explode under this sharp sword aura. He could not help but turn his head and look behind him. He saw the extremely thin sword aura approaching him at lightning speed, as if it was chasing after his soul. A dazzling light dazzled his eyes, startling him and causing him to stop running. Bang! Han Bowen's body crashed to the ground. A bloody hole appeared between his eyebrows. Evidently, he was no longer breathing. Chen Feng looked at Bewitching's move in astonishment. Even though he was far away, he could still feel how terrifying that sword aura was. Even with his cultivation, he had to be careful when facing this sword aura. It seemed that Bewitching's improvement was also very shocking. No wonder Qin Hongliang died in your hands. Your strength has indeed improved, Chen Feng said with a smile. However, do you want to take advantage of this opportunity to leave? It was such a pity that he had to share the treasures that he had obtained with great difficulty. Taking advantage of the fact that almost everyone was chasing after Nangong Yuqing and the others, it was a good choice to leave. Hearing this, Bewitching smiled and shook his head. No need. Actually, what we got this time is just a map. It's not a powerful treasure. Chen Feng understood. So that's the case. Is this a map of the primordial battlefield? Originally, he was still thinking about what kind of precious skill it was to share with everyone. Now that he understood, he completely understood that a map was indeed worthy of being shared with everyone. That's right. This is the map of this place. Right now, almost everyone doesn't understand the situation of the ancient battlefield. A map is actually very useful. Chen Feng smiled. It was similar to how he had wandered around the ancient battlefield for so long without knowing where he was. Oh, right. Along the way, did you see my elder brother? Bewitching asked. Yinju as well. We still haven't met up with them. Chapter 58-28. Who is he with? Bewitching's eyes lit up. Along the way, he had not heard any news about his elder brother. He could not help but worry. I heard someone mention it sporadically. Chen Feng turned his head and looked behind him. A cultivator immediately said, I heard that young Master D is with the Bailey family. Oh, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice had a trace of surprise. In fact, she also wanted to meet up with the Bailey family as soon as possible. No matter what, she was the head of the Bailey family. Although she was from 1,000 years ago, she was still inseparable from the Bailey family. That was his responsibility. However, along the way, she had not met any cultivators from the Bailey family. She felt somewhat helpless. Elder brother is with them. You don't have to worry. Bewitching naturally knew what Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking. He believed that as long as everyone met up, the possibility of danger in this ancient battlefield was relatively small. Moreover, elder brother was smart. With him leading the team, there would be no problem. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly with a smile. She believed in Di Xiaofeng's strength. No news about Yinju? By now, most of them had met up. Even if they had not met up with Lin Ta Xing and the others, they knew that they were together when they were at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. There was no need to worry. Mo Yunjue was the only one they had yet to meet. Chen Feng frowned and looked at the people behind him. Have you heard any news about young Master Mo? Their team had also gradually met up during the journey. Therefore, he was not very clear about some news. Everyone shook their heads. We have not met him, nor have we heard any news about him. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had a slightly complicated expression. They had been moving together all along. Why did most of them already have news about Mo Yunjue except for now? Could it be that when he entered the ancient battlefield, he was teleported to a very remote location? Bewitching noticed the worry in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes and comforted her softly. Don't worry, he'll be fine. They were very clear about Mo Yunjue's strength. Even among the many outstanding geniuses, he was still an extremely outstanding existence. In addition, Mo Yunjue also cultivated this sword art. As long as he did not encounter any great danger, he would be able to escape unscathed. By the way, since you have returned safely, how is the situation with Jun Lingxuan and the other two? Did they directly solve this problem? Chen Feng asked straightforwardly. Now that their relationship was extremely close, he understood the thoughts of Di Bei-chun and the others quite well. There was no need to hide it. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sowu were definitely two stumbling blocks. If he could get rid of them in the ancient battlefield, it would undoubtedly be great. Hearing this, Di Bei-chun shook his head slightly. The situation is somewhat beyond our expectations. They ran away? Chen Feng frowned. Logically speaking, with the strength of Di Bei-chun and the others, they should not have a chance to escape. However, if they missed this opportunity, it would be much more troublesome to find another one. That's not the case. The one who ran away was not him, but us. Jiang Wenyin sighed with emotion. Now that he thought about it, he could not help but feel apprehensive. Chapter 58-29. Looking at Chen Feng's incredulous expression, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but laugh. Chen Feng, who had always been calm, rarely showed such an expression. What are you laughing at? Chen Feng looked at them doubtfully. They should be extremely nervous after such a thing happened, yet they could still laugh. Jun Lingxuan is dead. Dead? Chen Feng frowned. Were you deliberately making fun of me just now? To be precise, his soul is gone, but his body is still alive. Chen Feng was slightly stunned. Then, his eyes suddenly widened, and his face was filled with horror. Jun Lingxuan was actually possessed? The situation was actually so thrilling after you entered the lake. We were lucky that we were able to escape. Jiang Wenyin spread his hands. Even though so many days had passed, he still felt an indescribable palpitation when he thought about it. So, the current Jun Lingxuan is no longer the previous Jun Lingxuan? Chen Feng was somewhat stunned. Originally, Jun Lingxuan's death was a good thing. However, with the current situation, things seem to have become more complicated. Then what do you plan to do? If we can kill him, we will kill him, Di Bei-chun said indifferently. The cultivators of the Great Devil Sect were also shocked by this news. Who would have thought that the dignified young master of the Jun family would end up like this? Have you heard any news about Jun Lingxuan along the way? Linger asked. Chen Feng shook his head slightly. Everyone only knows that Jun Lingxuan disappeared with you. Before I saw you, I didn't even hear any news about you. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Logically speaking, Jun Lingxuan would not have disappeared after appearing. However, it was strange that there was no news after so long. Qing Devil himself came from the ancient battlefield. Do you think that he has some base in the ancient battlefield? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. This seemed to be a possibility. It's possible. Di Bei-chun nodded. However, we don't know where his base is. Perhaps he has just succeeded in possessing someone and needs time to adapt to his new body. Just as everyone was talking, Chu Yingming and the others returned. Feeling everyone's attention, Chu Yingming said, Nangong Yuqing ran away. Except for some people who ran faster, everyone else stayed behind. Everyone was not surprised by this result. Nangong Yuqing's cultivation was outstanding among the cultivators here, so it was not easy to kill him. In fact, they did not intend to start a massacre. They just wanted to teach the other party a lesson and let him know that they were not to be trifled with. Moreover, the Nangong family, the Nangong Yuqings, the situation would be worse. After Yuqing, Chun, everyone stood still, and for a moment, no one was the first to speak. What we obtained earlier wasn't anything special, Lin Feng said with a smile. Di Bei-chun's voice gradually grew louder, but when these words fell into everyone's ears, it was not just ordinary depression. They had spent so much effort. Could it be that Di Bei-chun was fooling them? What we obtained before was a map of the ancient battlefield. It was because of this that we were able to share it with everyone. Chapter 58-30. So that's how it is. The map is also very good. It's better to know the environment than to wander around like a headless fly. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the map. Of course, this was not the original map, but a map drawn later on. The mountains and rivers on the map were all the same. The only difference was that there were no markings. After knowing that the secret of this place could not be kept, Bailey Hongzhuang redrew the lake, Mid-Lake Pavilion, and the Blood Spirit Stone. As for the other places, she directly ignored them. Those were the places they were going to explore. It could be said that they had grasped a great opportunity. How about she just tell everyone? Everyone was originally full of doubts about the map. However, when they looked at the environment on the map and connected it to the places they had been to before, they realized that it was a real map. It really is a map of the ancient battlefield. I came from here before. That's right, I came from here. Almost everyone found the place they had come from. Originally, they did not understand how big the places they had been to were in the ancient battlefield. At this moment, everyone finally had an intuitive understanding. No one suspected that the map was fake because none of the people who had come to the ancient battlefield with them could draw it. The only explanation was that this map came from the ancient battlefield. Look, this is the location of the Lake Mid-Lake Pavilion, right? A man pointed at the Lake Mid-Lake Pavilion on the map, and his eyes lit up. Almost everyone noticed the location of the symbol. The Lake Mid-Lake Pavilion's inheritance had already been obtained, and it had nothing to do with them. However, when they noticed the red stones that were drawn on the area, they could not help but look excited. The red stone seems to be pointing to this place. Chu Yingming raised his head and looked at Di Beichun and the others. He could not help but wonder if the inheritance in this red place had already fallen into the hands of Di Beichun and the others. After a short moment of excitement, everyone thought of this. If the inheritance had already fallen into the hands of Di Beichun and the others, then there was no point in being happy right now. We also just arrived here today, and we encountered the scene that you guys encountered, said the old man. The magnetic voice was as calm as ever. Looking at Di Beichun's calm face, everyone inexplicably began to believe him. This news was undoubtedly extremely good news for everyone. Expressions of pleasant surprise quietly surfaced on everyone's faces. Since that's the case, let's go and take a look, someone suggested. Everyone couldn't wait any longer. Ever since they realized that the clouds were different, they couldn't wait to get here as soon as possible. However, they had to wait for so long to get here. Di Beichun and the others looked at each other. Everyone had a tacit understanding and pretended that they had never been here. Although it was a little depressing to have to share this treasure with everyone had already gained a lot in the past 3 days. The group continued forward and soon arrived at the area where the Blood Spirit Stones were located. However, looking at the empty ground in front of them, everyone was stunned. Isn't there a red stone on the map? Why is there nothing here? Chapter 58:31. Facing everyone's questioning gazes, Di Beichun calmly said, "This is also my first time here, so how would I know?" Hearing this indifferent question, everyone withdrew their gazes and continued to search the area. Since the red stone was drawn on the map, it should be here. However, no inheritance can be obtained so easily. Maybe this is a test. Chu Yingming analyzed the situation. He didn't doubt Di Beichun's words. If Di Beichun really obtained the inheritance here, then there was no need for him to hide it. Even if they knew this, their strength couldn't compare to Di Beichun's group. Since he said so, it meant it was true. Therefore, Chu Yingming was very serious in his search. Not only him, but everyone present was also trying their best to find it. All of them were people who often went through experience and had gone through many tests. Although this kind of confusing situation didn't happen often, it wasn't unheard of. As long as they searched hard, they would eventually find it. In order not to be discovered, Di Beichun's group also searched everywhere, even though they knew the Blood Spirit Stone only appeared at night. Nangong Yuqing ran for a long time and found that no one was chasing after him. He stopped and breathed a sigh of relief. Soon, the disciples of the Nangong family gathered together. Looking at the number of cultivators in the family, Nangong Yuqing's face became ashen. That damn Di Beichun! Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but curse. He was about to explode in anger. On one hand, it was because Deep Beichen had gone too far. On the other hand, he was annoyed at his wrong decision. If it wasn't for his wrong judgment, this situation wouldn't have happened. Young master, what should we do now? Nangong Yuqing was silent for a moment, then waved his hand and said, Let's go. We can only accept our bad luck today. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. In the future, we will have a chance to take revenge. He also wanted to go back, but thinking about the strength of the other party, going back was equivalent to suicide. Therefore, this was the only way. Originally, Nangong Yuqing's mood was extremely bad, but after seeing the situation of the Blue Cloud sect and Xiao Yao Palace, he felt somewhat comforted. This was because the other two sects had really suffered heavy losses. Everyone was trying to find the Blood Spirit Stone, but they didn't find anything. However, they naturally found that the ground here was somewhat unusual, so they were sure that this place wasn't simple. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the potholes that appeared in front of her. This scene was really not ordinary. A few days ago, before they had discovered any clues, they had also used this stupid method, but the cruel reality told them that it was useless. Dibei Chun and Bailey Yinche were already sitting on the ground in a very free and easy manner, watching the sweaty digging while they themselves rested. However, at this moment, a surprise voice was heard. Look, there's something here. As soon as this was said, everyone's attention was drawn. Dibei Chun and the others looked at each other. They were somewhat surprised. Was this person's luck so good that he actually dug up a blood spirit stone during the day? Why did the situation change after the switch was turned on? Linger frowned slightly. This situation was good, but it was completely different from what they had experienced yesterday. Bailey Hongzhuang had a conjecture in her mind. Just as she was about to speak, she heard Di Beichan say, Perhaps this is a place specially used to train mental strength. I think so too. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. This ground has a great resistance to mental power, and the Blood Spirit Stone is underground. If we don't know where the Blood Spirit Stone is and directly dig it out, who knows how much time we'll waste. Chapter 58:34. Mental power was also known as spiritual sense. For cultivators, it was undoubtedly one of the most important methods. When a situation in front of one's eyes could not be seen clearly with the naked eye, mental power would play a huge role. To a certain extent, momentum and pressure were inseparable from mental power. In many situations, mental power would be used. Once mental power was increased, a cultivator's sensitivity would also increase greatly. However, if one wanted to increase their cultivation, they could cultivate. If they wanted to increase their mental power, the process was much more complicated than other methods. Many cultivators found it very difficult to increase their mental power, and they could not even find the corresponding method. Bailey Hongzhuang also had an urgent need to increase her mental power. If she wanted to summon other stronger contracted beasts or increase the number of contracted beasts, she needed stronger mental power. Previously, she had used medicinal pills to increase her mental power. Indeed, she had made considerable progress. Unfortunately, heaven and earth treasures to increase one's mental power were hard to come by. Even if she had refined some medicinal pills back then, she had squandered them all in a short period of time. Of course, her mental power was much stronger than before. When she used the method again, she could extend the time by a lot. The increase in mental power was far slower than the increase in cultivation. Although the increase in cultivation could lead to some improvement in mental power, the best method was still to cultivate mental power. The situation in front of them seemed to be a place specially set up to increase mental power. Even if it was not confirmed, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that this was the closest judgment to the truth. The reason why they had not been in such a situation a few days ago was because they did not find any mechanism. This place is specially set up to increase mental power. Murong Jing was a little surprised. Normally, There were many training places used to increase one's strength, but there were very few mechanisms that could be used to increase mental power. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. You can try to use your mental power to penetrate the ground to look for blood spirit stones. In the process of searching, your mental power will be consumed much faster than usual. The feeling of exhausting your mental power is very uncomfortable. However, every time it's completely exhausted, your mental power will recover and increase slightly. Di Beichun also spoke up. I see. Jiang Wenyan understood. Although they had never experienced such a situation before, they had to admit that if all of this was true, then it was indeed a good opportunity to increase their spiritual power. If they could take advantage of this opportunity to improve themselves, it would be of great help to everyone. Moreover, the rewards are also very generous. Everyone stopped chatting and focused their attention on finding the blood spirit stone. This kind of good opportunity was hard to come by. No one knew how many blood spirit stones there were here. If someone snatched them away, they would have nothing left. At this time, the strength of one's mental power was also revealed. The stronger his mental power, the deeper he could penetrate into the ground, and the higher his chances of finding a blood spirit stone. Cultivators who didn't have a strong enough mental strength could only find the scattered blood spirit stones on the surface. They could only rely on luck to find them. On the other hand, those with stronger mental strength would be able to search much faster. Of course, the more mental strength they expended, the faster their search speed would be. Chapter 58:35. This area was extremely large. Even though there were so many cultivators gathered here, it still seemed very spacious and empty. Because of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh at the generosity of the Immortal Region's cultivators. She didn't know how they'd made this land so special, but it was already very rare for them to think of such a method. Sure enough, no matter what they wanted to improve, there was a corresponding method. It was just that they hadn't found it before. Everyone lowered their heads and searched. After obtaining the first blood spirit stone, everyone understood that it was an excellent treasure. Compared to searching aimlessly in other places, it was better to stay here. After all, the harvest here could be seen. Night slowly fell. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wondered if the blood spirit stones would be as active as before. However, when the time was up, that situation didn't appear again. This was the change after the switch was pressed. It could be used to train mental power, but the speed at which they obtained blood spirit stones was undoubtedly much slower. I think that it wasn't a bad thing that we didn't find the switch before. Otherwise, if we wanted to collect as many blood spirit stones as we did before, I'm afraid that we'd have to stay here for a long time. Murong Jing lowered his voice. Although they could search for blood spirit stones all day long now, they had to expend a lot more energy than before. Once their mental power was exhausted, they had to sit down and rest. Mental power recovered slower than origin power, so they could only recover by sleeping. This process was undoubtedly much longer. I think so too, huh? Jiang Wenyan chuckled. However, since it can improve our mental power, it's also very good. We'll just treat it as training. Murong Jing nodded slightly. However, this feeling of exhausting our mental power is really unpleasant. Just as the two of them were discussing the top-heavy situation after exhausting their mental power, Di Beichun's voice suddenly rang out. After increasing your mental power, if someone wants to take over your body, it'll be very difficult. If your mental power is strong enough, you might be able to directly destroy your opponent's soul. Murong Jing and Jiang Wenyan's expressions instantly changed. They no longer had any thoughts of complaining. When they thought about how Jun Lingxuan had fallen into such a situation, their hearts trembled. This kind of death was too cruel. No one could accept it. Although the process of increasing one's mental strength was very painful, with such benefits, what was there to complain about? The amount of mental power consumed by the soil was astonishing. In addition, blood spirit stones were buried at different depths. Usually, blood spirit stones within 2 meters of each other were easily discovered. Unfortunately, there are only a few blood spirit stones at this depth. more blood spirit stones were buried even deeper. Therefore, after searching for a while, it became difficult to find them again. When Bailey Hongzhuang took out another blood spiritual stone from the ground, the cultivator beside her was in disbelief. I searched there before, but I didn't see any blood spirit stones. He had just walked over from that area. He was still wondering why Bailey Hongzhuang had gone there, but the result made him blush. Don't be silly. Isn't this simple? It must be because Bailey Hongzhuang's spiritual power is stronger than yours, so she can penetrate deeper and see the blood spirit stones. Chapter 58:36. Even with his spiritual power, he felt as if he had encountered an extremely hard rock after penetrating 2 meters into the ground. No matter how hard he tried, he could not penetrate it. For cultivators, there might be differences in cultivation and combat strength, but the difference in spiritual power was not that great. After all, no one had a way to increase their spiritual power. They had always improved their cultivation along with it. It was too difficult to be much stronger than ordinary people. Don't forget that Bailey Hongzhuang is a grade 9 alchemist. Alchemists have stronger spiritual power than ordinary people like us. Moreover, she is the Saint of the Light. The woman beside him raised her eyebrows. Although she did not want to admit it, she had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang was so outstanding that it made people envious. In the past, Xiao Shou had been crowned as the Saint of the Light for so many years. Everyone had thought that she was just lucky. Her true strength had never been as outstanding as the Saint of the Light. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang became the Saint of the Light, what everyone cared about the most was not the title, but herself. This was because her brilliance was already more dazzling than the title of Saint of the Light. It is understandable that Bailey Hongzhuang is like this, but why is Di Beichun doing the same? The man's lips twitched. Di Beichun was not an alchemist, nor was he of the light attribute. However, he was not any slower than Bailey Hongzhuang when it came to collecting blood spirit stones. Usually, people would be lucky if they could find one blood spirit stone in an area that was 10 meters wide. Di Beichun was not like that at all. He dug here and there. Every time he dug, he would find a blood spirit stone. When he was lucky, he would even find several blood spirit stones at once. This cannot be all luck, right? The woman was stunned. She did not know how to explain the situation. Look at those two. The man pointed at Li Yin Che and Ling were not far away. He had first noticed them because of their outstanding appearance. Later, he had been paying attention to them because of their speed. Fortunately, other than these 4 people, everyone else's performance was very normal. This made them believe that it wasn't that they were too weak, but that their spiritual power was ridiculously strong. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others are people who can't be judged by common sense. Look at Murong Jing, Chu Yingming, and the others. Aren't they similar? Just think of it that way. You'll feel better. Murong Jing, Chu Yingming. After the first cultivator started to rest due to the lack of mental strength, the other cultivators also started to rest due to the exhaustion of their mental strength. After exhausting their mental strength, everyone's faces were no longer as spirited as before. Exhaustion was written all over their faces. Normally, he wouldn't feel this uncomfortable even if his elemental energy was depleted. However, after his mental energy was depleted, it was as if he hadn't rested for a long time. His head hurt as if it was being pricked by needles. Everyone was not used to this feeling. They all sat down and rested with their hands on their heads. As her mental strength was gradually depleted, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt that her head was very uncomfortable. However, she knew that she had to completely squeeze out all of her mental strength. Only then could her mental strength increase. One by one, the blood spirit stones were taken out, and Bailey Hongzhuang placed them in the primordial chaos ring. These things were very helpful for increasing their strength. Chapter 58:37. Even if they were doing this for the sake of strengthening their strength in the future, they couldn't fall too far behind when so many people had already broken through. Sigh. I can't do it anymore. Jiang Wenyin waved his hand and sat down limply. This feeling of powerlessness was too unbearable. Murong Jing looked at Jiang Wenyin and said with a smile, I can't do it anymore either. However, look at Di Beichun and the rest. With this comparison, you can see where the gap is. At this moment, apart from Di Beichun's group of 4, only Chun Feng was still practicing. This proved that not only were they stronger than ordinary people, even their spiritual energy was stronger. Haha, I used to call myself a genius. Now that I compare them, I realize that I'm not. Jiang Wenyin shook his head and sighed. He was also a first-rate genius in the Jiang family. All these years, in order to live up to his position as the young master, he had never slacked off in his cultivation. However, when facing Di Beichun and the rest, the pride in his heart disappeared. Perhaps if it were someone else, he would also feel jealous. However, when facing Di Beichun, he only felt admiration. He knew that Di Beichun and the rest must have been extremely hard-working in their cultivation. That breathtaking sword, that terrifying sword chi, he had never seen anything like it, even in the hands of his elders. He believed that such a sword could only be used after thousands of tempering. For Di Beichun to be able to master it at such a young age, the amount of time and energy he had spent must be terrifying. If Di Beichun knew what Jiang Wenyin was thinking, he would definitely shake his head. In the past few days, they did nothing but practice their sword during the day. However, compared to Zhongli, his sword was nothing. Whether it was sword chi or power, it was far inferior. Only after seeing Zhongli sword would they understand what true sword chi was. Chen Feng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 and couldn't help but smile. My master once said that my spiritual energy is different from ordinary people, much stronger than cultivators of the same level. Now, it seems like your spiritual energy is even more terrifying. Birds of a feather flock together. Di Beichun raised his eyebrows, and his lips curled into a devilish smile. Chun Feng blanked before a bright smile appeared on his face. That's right, birds of a feather flock together. After a while, even they couldn't hold on any longer. After exhausting the last of her mental strength, Bailey Hongzhuang's face turned pale, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. She tried her best to control herself and sat down at the side. She closed her eyes and began to rest. The blood spirit stone was in her possession. As her cultivation increased, the benefits of the demon's summoning scripture, a heaven-defying cultivation method, also became more apparent. Even if she was sleeping, the demon's summoning scripture would still automatically circulate and increase her cultivation. Of course, this speed wasn't as fast as when he was cultivating, but it wasn't too slow either. In the long run, the effects would be quite significant. Moreover, he had the pure energy of the blood spirit stone beside him. Bailey Hongzhuang's small action attracted the attention of several people. They were somewhat stunned, not understanding what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing. Only people familiar with Di Beichun's group knew that Di Beichun's situation was somewhat similar to Bailey Hongzhuang's. After transforming into a heavenly physique, he was blessed by the heavens in terms of cultivation. Chapter 58-38. The recovery of mental energy was very slow. After completely exhausting it the first time, it took everyone a few days to recover. After recovering, everyone looked at the ground in front of them and couldn't help but feel helpless. The amount of time spent was simply too shocking. Every time they obtained a few blood spirit stones, it would take so long. It would delay their cultivation too much. Why don't we try to directly dig up this piece of land? The leader of one of the sects suggested. He didn't care about training his mental energy at all. He only wanted to obtain blood spirit stones. I think it's a good idea. Even if we dig up the entire piece of land, it'll take less time than using mental energy to search. That's right, let's do that. The feeling of exhausting their mental energy was too painful. Everyone instinctively didn't want to try it again. Looking at the eager crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others remained silent. Jiang Wenyin stood up and suggested, if you want to dig, that's fine. I think you should go dig over there. We'll continue to increase our mental energy here. What do you think? Hearing this, the people from the sects thought for a moment before nodding in agreement. Chu Yingming was originally a bit tempted by their suggestion, but seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others weren't moved, he gave up on the idea. For some reason, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others seemed to have a better understanding of the situation here. Since they didn't do it, they must have their reasons. Instinctively, he chose not to do it. These guys still don't understand. Didn't we try to dig up before? It's completely useless. It's a waste of time. Bali Yin Che raised his eyebrows. This place was clearly used to increase mental energy. It was impossible to take advantage of it. Ling Er's expression was indifferent as she lazily glanced over. They'll understand this very soon. Don't worry about it so much. Let's continue. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. This was a rare opportunity, so she had to grasp it. In fact, even she felt that the recovery of mental strength was too slow. It was no wonder that most cultivators would not cultivate their mental strength. The amount of time it took was terrifying. If it weren't for the fact that she cultivated the demon summoning scripture, which allowed her to increase her cultivation even when she was resting, she wouldn't have been able to endure spending so much time on increasing her mental strength and causing her cultivation to stagnate. For a time, everyone began to search for blood spirit stones again. On the other side, there were complaints everywhere. Why is there still nothing after digging for so long? This doesn't make sense. Normally, there would be a blood spirit stone in such a wide distance. The area they dug was very wide. Several teams of people worked together. They didn't dig down in one place, but dug as a whole. It didn't take long for them to dig out a huge hole in the ground. The strange thing was that they hadn't found a single blood spirit stone. This situation left everyone dumbfounded. Why is this happening? This is too strange. Could it be that there are no more blood spirit stones here? Seeing the other party's bewilderment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were very calm. This situation was within their expectations, because they had agreed to only touch that area. Even if they had some ideas, they could only helplessly give up. Chapter 58:39. This place is too strange. Previously, there wasn't even a single blood spirit stone here. Why are they appearing now? Although I don't know why. The situation is already very obvious. This is the only way to obtain the blood spirit stone. If you want to use other methods, it won't work. A deep sense of helplessness surfaced in everyone's hearts. They could only continue using this method to search. Compared to the others' vexation, Bailey Hongzhuang was completely immersed in the improvement of her spiritual energy. Even though this process was relatively slow, she could still clearly feel the improvement in her spiritual energy. During the process of searching for blood spirit stones, she found that the sensitivity of her spiritual energy had increased as well. If she had enough time, she would be willing to continue staying here. During this process, they encountered some other groups, and everyone joined the search. As time passed, even with the temptation of blood spirit stones, some cultivators could no longer hold themselves back and chose to leave. No one knew if there would be more harvest in other places, and the harvest here was too slow, and the process was more than a little torturous. After the first group left, there would be more cultivators leaving every few days. The groups came and went. Only Bailey Hongzhuang and the others remained resolutely here. 3 months later, they found that the number of blood spirit stones here had started to decrease, and the speed of searching was no longer as fast as before. Hongzhuang, let's leave this place as well. Deep Beichin turned around, his gaze gentle. There aren't many blood spirit stones here anymore. We can go to other places to search. All right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She also felt that it was time to leave. During these 3 months, her spiritual energy had improved considerably. Since this training ground belonged to the immortal domain, she believed that she would be able to find similar places to cultivate after reaching the immortal domain. There was no need to rush. Jiang Wenyin and the others were also looking forward to leaving as soon as possible. This was a torturous process of improvement. None of them could enjoy it. Chen Feng, we are preparing to leave. What are your plans? Di Beichen asked. Chen Feng smiled. Since all of you are preparing to leave, it is only natural that we leave together. That way, it will be safer, right? His joking words caused everyone to laugh. An ordinary faction would not dare to provoke the Great Devil Sex group, so why would they need to worry about their safety? The group once again set foot on the road ahead. Their destination was naturally the other place indicated on the map. There was only a simple lightning symbol on the map and nothing else. Although none of them had the lightning attribute, this place was the closest place to them. Even if they wanted to go to other places, they would have to pass by here. Therefore, everyone made up their minds to take a look. For several days, no one saw any teams. They had stayed there for too long. Most of the teams had already left the area. On this day, they finally met a team, and it was a team that Di Beichen was extremely familiar with. Star Stomp. Di Beichen laughed. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was pleasantly surprised. I finally met you again. When they saw Di Beichen and the others, they could not hide their surprise. Heavens, we finally meet again. Chapter 5840. Where have you been all this time? We couldn't find you anywhere. Lin Taxing's face revealed a rare look of annoyance. He really wanted to find Di Beichen and the others as soon as possible, but he was worried that they would be in danger. Noticing that Lin Taxing's behavior was different from before, Di Beichen's face became a little more solemn. He asked in a deep voice, "Did something happen?" Di Beichen, Jun Lingshuan's strength has improved a lot compared to before. Most people are no match for him now. As far as I know, many people have died at his hands. Now everyone regards him as a killing machine and wants to stay as far away from him as possible. You saw Jun Lingshuan? Di Beichen's expression changed. Lin Taxing shook his head. We didn't see him, but an acquaintance did. He told me that the teams of the Jun family and the Xiao family are now looking for us everywhere. Jun Lingshuan even threatened to kill all of us. So we've been very careful not to be found by them. We also want to tell you this news as soon as possible. It's strange. Even if Jun Lingshuan has broken through to the Radiant Moon realm, his strength can't be that strong. Lin Qianqian was a little puzzled. But according to the exact information we received, Jun Lingshuan's current strength can only be described as terrifying. That's not strange. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. The situation they didn't want to see had happened. Not strange. Lin Taxing was stunned, and then he suddenly said, did he get an incredible inheritance at the bottom of the lake, so his cultivation improved? That's not the real Jun Lingshuan at all. Jun Lingshuan is dead. Now it's another soul living in his body. Bali Yin Che explained. How is that possible? Lin Taxing was stunned. If that's the case, why would he help the Jun family to deal with us? Perhaps after he took over Jun Lingshuan's body, he felt that he should do something for Jun Lingshuan. Or perhaps it's because we know his secret. Of course, it's also possible that he's an arbitrary person, so he does whatever he wants. Bailey Hongzhuang voiced her conjecture. Just like when she took over Bailey Hongzhuang's body, she wanted to help Bailey Hongzhuang take back everything that belonged to her. Of course, her time travel happened when the original owner of the body had already died, and the Qing Devil had cruelly taken over her body. He didn't think that Qing Devil would be so kind as to help Jun Lingshuan, but the only thing he was sure of was that Qing Devil didn't like their existence. By the way, how is Xiao Soa doing? Is she still alive? Di Beichun suddenly asked. Xiao Soa was also a key figure. If Xiao Soa was still alive, as long as she pointed out everything, everyone would know that the Qing Devil wasn't the real Jun Lingshuan. Otherwise, the Qing Devil had erased Jun Lingshuan's soul and taken over his memory. As long as he wanted to disguise himself, it would be very difficult for them to expose him. She's still alive, and she and Jun Lingshuan seem to be very close, just like before. Lin Qianqian frowned. Are you sure you're not mistaken? If Jun Lingshuan isn't the real him, why is Xiao Soa still with him? Hearing this news, Bailey Hongzhuang and others were all stunned, and their eyes were full of disbelief. They're together? And they're very close? Bali Yin Che was stunned. How was that possible? Chapter 5842. Maybe they had already met him on the way. Okay. Lin Taxing nodded. At this moment, after meeting up with Bewitching and others, he felt a little more at ease. Everyone moved forward, but they couldn't help but feel pressured. The Qing Devil was their mortal enemy. If there is really no way, we can only ask Granny Hua for her opinion. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was slightly gloomy. Even if she knew that Granny Hua would not intervene, she felt that she could ask for Granny Hua's opinion. Vaguely, she felt that the immortal area should also have rules. Just as the cultivators in the upper realm could not easily go to the lower realm, the cultivators in the immortal area should not go to the upper realm at will. Looking at the worry on the beautiful face, Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang with his big hand. We will cross that bridge when we come to it. Moreover, the Qing Devil's strength is limited by Jun Lingxuan's physical body. It is impossible for the Qing Devil's strength to quickly recover to the past. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This was already a blessing in disguise. He wondered what were their chances of winning against the Azure Fiend now. The group walked in the direction of the thunderbolt marked on the map. The two places marked in front had good gains. I wonder if there will be gains in the third place. Have you heard any news about Xiren and Yingying? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Lin Yi with a trace of doubt on her beautiful face. Lin Yi shook her head. We haven't heard from them since they disappeared from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. I think they should still be in the inheritance of the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Some inheritances take a long time. I don't think they will come out for a while. Lin Xianxian also said, this ancient battlefield looks very amazing, but after coming in, I found that the inheritances here are really pitiful. Yingying and the others are really lucky to find inheritances here. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She believed that everyone would find an opportunity suitable for them. Even if they didn't find it here, they would always encounter it somewhere else. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were also people with luck, at least they had gained quite a lot from their two adventures. Beichen, where are you going? Lin Taxing was also a little curious when he saw Deep Beichen and his party heading in a certain direction. We plan to go to another place where we may gain something. Di Beichen smiled and handed the map to Lin Tang. You'll know when you see it. When Lin Taxing saw the map clearly, he could not help but be stunned. You actually have a map? When Yin found it, Di Beichen said with a smile. I really should have met up with you guys earlier. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had to wander around like a headless fly. Up until now, I have gained almost nothing. I might as well just stay in one place and cultivate. What a waste of time. The eyes of the cultivators from the Lin and Di families flashed with excitement when they learned about the map. Their journey here was just as Lin Taxing had said, a waste of time. After several days of traveling, everyone was getting closer and closer to the marked place. This place seems to be getting more and more remote. There are fewer and fewer plants around. It's really strange. If you use lightning to temper your body, the strength of your body will reach an extremely terrifying level. Ling Er's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. She had always admired powerful lightning attribute cultivators. Lin Yi and others couldn't help but glance at Ling Er. They only felt that Ling Er was quite proficient in this attribute power. Once a lightning attributed cultivator cultivates, their strength will increase tremendously. However, this cultivation process is also very painful. It's not something ordinary people can endure. Indeed, Bailey Hongzhuang agreed. Just thinking about lightning tempering the body was not something ordinary people could bear. This place is so remote. No wonder no one has heard of you. Di Beichun understood. If they didn't have a map, they probably wouldn't have come here by accident. However, Imo Yunjue had come to this area when he had just entered the ancient battlefield. It could be seen that his luck was extremely good. Yunjue, has your body become much stronger after being tempered by thunder and lightning? Ling suddenly asked. Imo Yunjue nodded. Thunder and lightning can indeed temper the body. After staying here for so long, my body's strength has increased a lot. Ordinary weapons can no longer hurt me. Chapter 58:45. When the crowd heard that Imo Yunjua's body had been tempered to such an extent, they were secretly envious of him. Since ordinary weapons could no longer hurt him, it meant that his defense and combat power had increased as well. Generally speaking, the destructive power of a lightning attribute cultivator was already extremely strong. Coupled with their terrifying defense, if cultivators of the same level did not have any ability, they would not be a match for them. The lightning attribute cultivators were originally eager to seize this opportunity. However, when they saw the terrifying strength of the lightning lock, they could not help but have doubts in their hearts. Could they really withstand it? If they could not withstand it, a terrifying bolt of lightning would strike them, and they would not be able to withstand it. Imo Yunjua saw through their thoughts and immediately said, "I have stayed in the lightning lock for so long and found that there will not be thick lightning near the edge. Although you will have to suffer some pain, you should be able to withstand it." Hearing Imo Yunjua's words, the cultivator's eyes lit up, and a trace of excitement flashed in their eyes. "Thank you, young Master Imo. In fact, apart from lightning attribute cultivators, cultivators of other attributes can also use lightning to temper their bodies. However, unlike lightning attribute cultivators who can directly absorb the power of lightning, it will be more painful. However, if you can master it, it will be very helpful," Lingyur said again. Lin Taxing was immediately interested. "Then I will give it a try." After carefully sensing the defensive power of Imo Yunjua's body just now, he was really envious. If he could reach such a level, he would have a huge advantage against cultivators of the same level. "I will give it a try too," Lin Qianqian said with a smile. With Lin Taxing and Lin Taxing taking the lead, a lot of cultivators became interested and entered the lightning lock one after another. Chen Feng would naturally not let go of such an opportunity. He had never cared about enduring pain. Just like when he was on the deck, as long as he could improve, everything else did not matter. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were not in a hurry to enter the Thunder Lake. Instead, they sat on the ground and chatted with Imo Yunjua. "Yunju, you seem to have broken through to the Radiant Moon realm?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked with raised brows. Imo Yunjua nodded slightly. "I unconsciously broke through in this lightning lake. The lightning lake is very rich in energy, and my lightning attribute is much stronger than before." "Then your combat power should be very strong now." Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichun. After breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm, there would be a huge increase in his cultivation. Imo Yunjua noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's expressions were different from usual. His gaze became complicated. Chapter 58:46. As the group of cultivators walked into the Thunder Lake, they finally felt the terror of the lightning. As soon as the lightning entered their bodies, they felt as if they were hit hard. The power of the lightning was extremely strong. While the terrifying power tempered the body, it also destroyed the meridians in the body at the same time. The only way was to endure the pain, stabilize the mind, and control the power of the lightning to act on the body. Once it was out of control, the destructive power of the lightning would be shocking. Therefore, everyone needed to find a lightning they could withstand according to their own strength. The process seemed simple, but it was extremely dangerous. The slightest mistake could cost one's life. When everyone found that it was difficult to even stay at the edge of the Thunder Lake, they were terrified when they thought about how Imo Yunjua had the guts to stand in the middle of the Thunder Lake. For a few months, Imo Yunjua had been staying here and being struck by lightning. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed a petite and agile figure in the Thunder Lake. Her eyes lit up. The dark magic fox is also in the Thunder Lake. Imo Yunjua glanced at the black little guy and smiled faintly. "When I entered the Thunder Lake to cultivate, it entered with me." Interestingly enough, after being baptized by the lightning, its body also carried the lightning attribute. Now, it has gotten used to the Thunder Lake's environment. During this period, its strength has increased at an amazing speed. Mo Yunjua's contract with the Dark Magic Fox was shorter than everyone else, so the Dark Magic Fox's cultivation was slightly lower than Xiao Xuanzi's. However, it had absorbed a lot of energy in the Thunder Lake and broke through to the Nebula Realm. So, this Dark Magic Fox can also transform into a human? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She didn't know if the contract bee's personality was similar to its master, but the Dark Magic Fox's style was exactly the same as Mo Yunjua's. Usually, even when it appeared in front of everyone, it had a lazy and arrogant look. Most of the time, it cultivated in the beast pet space and didn't like to talk at all. Mo Yunjua nodded slightly. It should be possible, but it hasn't transformed into a human yet. Why? Bailey Hongzhuang raises her eyebrows. Do contract beasts nowadays have such personalities? Xiao Xuanzi was obviously able to transform into a human form, but he was unwilling to reveal it. Of course, they also knew that this was because the human form after transforming was different from Xiao Xuanzi's imagination. Could it be that the Dark Magic Fox was the same? I've asked it. It said that it's fine the way it is now. It's too lazy to change. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun looked at each other. It seemed that their judgment was right. In the past, they had always felt that the Dark Magic Raccoon was not only cold, but also lazy. Normally, it would not want to interact with them at all. Even when it saw them, it would just give them a lazy look as a greeting. But now, he couldn't even be bothered to transform into his human form. Noticing the expressions of the two, Mo Yunjue smiled faintly. Actually, it's fine the way it is. It's convenient to bring it around. Otherwise, if two big men stay together all the time, I won't be used to it. What you said makes some sense. Bali Yin Che chuckled. When two icebergs were together, the temperature was really low. Don't talk nonsense. Do you plan to stay here? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bai Li Yin Che. Now, almost everyone had gone in, but Bai Li Yin Che and Ling were still here. Chapter 58-47. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly as her beautiful face became even more radiant. I forgot that you are a demonic beast, and your physical body is extremely strong. In terms of physical strength, demonic beasts had always had an advantage over humans. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun also walked towards the Lightning Lake. The Lightning Lake was huge, but there were still quite a number of people in the few teams. At this moment, everyone was gathered at the edge of the Lightning Lake. Of course, to absorb the lightning, everyone was separated by a certain distance. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun chose a spot, they began to try using the lightning to refine their physical bodies. Thinking back to the time when they went to the Immortal Cloud's secret realm, after the training on the deck, their physical strength had increased and was much stronger than before. If they would be refined by the lightning, it would be even better. Kacha! A bolt of lightning suddenly struck down. Bailey Hongzhuang did not recklessly come into contact with the lightning. There was a lot of lightning in the Lightning Lake, and she had to find a lightning that she could withstand when she first started cultivating. Looking at the tiny bolt of lightning that fell from the sky, Bailey Hongzhuang did not dodge and allowed the lightning to strike her body. The moment the lightning entered her body, Bailey Hongzhuang's body trembled and a series of electric arcs flashed in her body, bringing with it a dazzling light. She felt a numbing sensation in her body. That was the effect of the lightning. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately used the demon summoning scripture. She could not let the lightning damage her body because she was not a lightning-type cultivator and could not absorb such power. Hence, the only thing she could do was to guide the lightning to refine her skin. Everyone had to be careful when facing the lightning. If they were not careful, they could lose their lives. Of course, during this process, there were also cultivators who were accidentally struck by the stronger lightning and fell unconscious. When the surrounding cultivators noticed this, they immediately carried him out of the lightning lake while the lightning-type cultivators tried to absorb the lightning energy in his body. Most of the time, the lightning in the Thunderlock was regular, but occasionally there would be a thick bolt of lightning at the edge. Although everyone felt helpless, they could only be cautious. If he was struck by lightning that he couldn't withstand, he might even die. Bailey Hongzhuang used the demon summoning scripture to summon the power of thunder and lightning. Sparks would occasionally appear on the surface of her body. Her delicate face was a little pale. She closed her eyes and immersed herself in cultivation. Lightning body tempering was not a process that could be completed in a short period of time. Mo Yunjue had stayed in the lightning lake for a long time. During this time, he had adapted to the intensity of the lightning. Therefore, even though he was standing in the middle of the lightning lake, he was not afraid. It was only when the crowd saw the terrifying lightning strike his body that their hearts trembled. Time gradually passed. Other than the first few days when everyone was excitedly guiding the lightning to temper their bodies, as the pain continued to deepen, coupled with the fact that they could lose their lives at any time, some cultivators gradually chose to give up. Everyone had a cultivation method that was suitable for them. It was just that they chose different cultivation methods. Natural selection, survival of the fittest. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.